You ever notice how people will cross the line, step on your dignity, and then wait on your reaction? Like your piece is their entertainment. Let me tell you something, not every action needs a reaction. Sometimes your silence is the loudest statement you can make. See, we live in a world where everybody wants the last word. Folks will poke pride and press you just to get you to explode. Why? Because misery loves company. And when you match their energy, when you stoop down to their level, you just gave them what they wanted. You gave them access. Let me be real. Disrespect hurts. Ain't no sugarcoating that. It stings. But what you do after the sting, that's where your power lies. You don't need to clap back. You don't need to prove your worth. You don't need to remind folks who you are. Because when you truly know your value, when you know what you bring to the table, you don't chase closure. You create distance. Silence after disrespect, that ain't weakness. That's control. That's discipline. That's royalty. That's saying you can't pull me into your storm because I'm too busy building my peace. So the next time someone throws shade, disrespects your name, or tries to dim your light, remember this. A lion don't turn around when a dog barks. Stay still. Stay solid. Stay quiet. And most importantly, stay you. Thank you. Silence is power. It's a concept that often gets misunderstood in a world that celebrates loud voices, quick comebacks, and public confrontation. But those who truly understand strength know that silence isn't about submission. It's about control. It's about choosing where and how your energy gets spent. When someone disrespects you, your first instinct might be to fire back, to defend yourself, to prove your point. That's human. But silence, intentional, calm, unbothered silence is often the most impactful response you can give. In a society that thrives off reaction, silence becomes a rare and commanding force. When people expect you to lose your temper, to argue, to lash out, and you don't give them that satisfaction, they're left with their own noise. They're left facing themselves. And often that's more uncomfortable for them than anything you could have said. Because your lack of response forces them to confront their own behavior without the distraction of your reaction. Silence is not passive, it's not the absence of action, it's a decision, a deliberate one. When you stay quiet after disrespect, you're not allowing the other person to win. You're deciding that their energy isn't worth your own. You're placing a boundary they can't cross because you're not giving them the door. You're choosing yourself over temporary satisfaction of getting even. And in that choice, you grow. There's also a kind of dignity in silence that words can never touch. When someone disrespects you and you respond with grace, with composure, and most importantly, with silence, it says something about your internal foundation. It says you're not easily shaken. It shows you're governed by principle, not impulse. It speaks volumes without making a sound. It says, I heard you. I saw what you did. And I'm still not coming down to your level. In many cases, people who disrespect you are looking for one thing, validation. They want to know they can trigger you, control your emotions, make you step out of character. They want a reaction because your reaction gives them relevance. So when you stay quiet, you're not just preserving your peace, you're stripping them of the very thing they came for, your attention. And attention is a form of currency. Don't spend it on someone who can't afford to value it. There's a kind of psychological warfare that happens when you stay quiet in the face of disrespect. It shifts the dynamic. The person who disrespected you is left unsure. They don't know what you're thinking, how you're feeling, or what you might do next. That uncertainty, that silence, it's unnerving to them. People who live off chaos can't function in stillness. They crave noise. They feed off reactions. But when you deny them that fuel, you disarm them. Another layer to silence being power is how it protects your image and your future. In the heat of the moment, we often say things we don't mean. We let anger do the talking. We let pride and ego step in. And once something is said, especially in this digital age, it's out there. It can't be unsaid. But silence can't be misquoted. It can't be twisted. It can't be used against you later. It's clean. It's calm. It's calm. It leaves no evidence. And in many ways, that's more dangerous to your enemies than any words you could have spoken. Silence is also powerful because it forces you inward. It gives you time to reflect, to process, to choose your next move with clarity rather than emotion. Instead of reacting impulsively and regretting it later, silence gives you space. It gives you the power of pause. And in that pause, wisdom grows. You start to ask yourself the right questions. Is this worth my time? Does this person even deserve a response? What will I gain from engaging with them at the? More often than not, the answer leads you back to silence. People often confuse silence with avoidance. But the truth is, silence is sometimes the bravest thing you can do. It takes more strength to hold your tongue than to speak it. It takes restraint to walk away. It takes confidence to know that you don't have to explain yourself, defend yourself, or involve yourself. That kind of confidence doesn't come easy. It's earned through self-respect and experience. But once you have it, silence becomes your armor. Not because you're hiding, but because you know your worth isn't tied to anyone else's opinion. There's also a spiritual side to silence. Sometimes when you're quiet, you're letting the universe, God, or whatever higher power you believe in do the talking for you. You're saying, I don't need to fight this battle in the flesh. I'm going to stay grounded, stay focused, and let time reveal the truth, because time always does. The person who disrespected you will expose themselves far more effectively than you ever could by calling them out. Their pattern will repeat. Their energy will circulate. And eventually, people will see them for who they are. Your silence just speeds that up because it removes you from the narrative. On a practical level, silence can also protect your mental health. Arguing, explaining, defending, it's exhausting. It drains you emotionally. It pulls you into someone else's chaos. But when you choose silence, you're choosing to protect your space. You're choosing peace over performance. You're choosing your own well-being over someone else's need to feel powerful. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. Lastly, silence teaches others how to treat you. If someone disrespects you and you immediately respond with rage or hurt, they learn they can manipulate you. But if you respond with silence, they learn they don't control your emotions. They don't get to dictate how you feel or behave. And that's a lesson more powerful than any words you could ever say. Not everyone deserves access. That simple truth can change the way you live, the way you interact, and the way you protect your peace. Too often, we give people access to our emotions, our energy, our minds, without ever stopping to ask whether they've earned that privilege. Access is not a right, it's a responsibility. It's something that should be granted with care, not handed out freely just because someone demands your attention, your time, or your reaction. When someone disrespects you, what they're often really trying to do is gain access. They want access to your emotion. They want access to your mind, to your peace, to your reaction. They want to control the way you feel in that moment. And when you give them that reaction, when you argue, when you explain yourself, when you get angry, you've opened the door. That's what happens when you stop defending your worth and start living in it. There is a quiet confidence in those who understand their value. They don't beg to be seen. They don't fight to be included. They don't compete for attention. They know that what they bring to the table is special. And if someone doesn't recognize it, that's fine. They'll move to a different table or they'll build their own because they know they are the asset. They know their presence is a gift. They know they bring something to the world that no one else can duplicate. And that kind of self-awareness is a shield. It protects you from the nonsense, the drama, the disrespect. You don't have to respond to everything. You don't have to clarify every rumor. You don't have to prove yourself in every room. Let your actions speak. Let your results speak. Let your peace speak. Let your silence speak. You don't need to get loud to be heard. You don't need to get defensive to be right. When you carry yourself with integrity, when you stay aligned with your truth, the right people will see it. And the wrong people, they'll disqualify themselves. People will project their insecurities onto you. They'll try to make you doubt yourself. They'll try to make you feel like you're not enough. But when you know who you are, you stop letting their projections become your reality. You stop letting their confusion become your narrative. You stop letting their disrespect dictate your identity. You stop defending your worth because you finally understand it was never on trial. It was never up for debate. And it certainly doesn't need a closing argument. You didn't come here to convince people. You didn't come here to gain approval. You didn't come here to fit in. You came here to be real, to be whole, to be powerful. And that doesn't require a defense. It requires presence. It requires alignment. It requires a deep, unwavering understanding that who you are is enough, even when they don't see it, even when they talk about you, even when they walk away, you are still enough. You are still worthy. And you owe no one an explanation for that. Growth is silent. It doesn't make announcements. It doesn't seek approval. And it doesn't come with applause. One of the most powerful realizations you'll ever have is that your growth doesn't need to be loud to be real. In fact, the most transformative changes happen quietly. They happen in private. They happen when no one's watching, when no one is cheering, when no one even notices but you. That's when you know it's real. That's when you know it's deep. And that's when you know it's yours. In a world obsessed with validation, where people broadcast every move, every win, every improvement, the idea that growth can be private feels almost countercultural. But the truth is, the loudest person in the room is often the most insecure. The person constantly talking about how much they've changed, how much they've evolved, is often trying to convince themselves more than anyone else. Real growth doesn't need marketing. It shows up in how you carry yourself. It reveals itself in your decisions. It's evident in what you no longer tolerate, what you no longer chase, and what you finally let go of. There's a certain peace that comes with silent growth. You're no longer performing for approval. You're no longer seeking a round of applause for every step forward. You're no longer obsessed with being seen. Instead, you become focused on being aligned, on being authentic, on being rooted in truth, not trends. Growth becomes something you pursue for you, not to prove something, not to stun on anyone, not to make a point. Just because it's time, just because you're ready, just because you want better, and are willing to do the work to get it. The beautiful thing about growing silently is that it protects you from distractions. When you don't announce your every move, people can't interfere. They can't inject doubt, criticism, or negativity into something they don't know is happening. You create space for yourself to evolve without judgment. You allow yourself the grace to make mistakes, to stumble, to restart without an audience. And in that space, you become stronger. You become more self-aware. You become more disciplined because you're doing it for the right reason. Sometimes people don't recognize your growth because they're looking for evidence in the wrong places. They expect a new job, a new look, a new relationship, a dramatic shift. But real growth is often invisible. It looks like walking away instead of reacting. It looks like choosing silence instead of arguing. It looks like resting when you used to grind yourself into the ground. It looks like peace instead of chaos. It looks like turning down an opportunity because it doesn't align with your values anymore. That's not always flashy, but it's powerful. You start to realize that elevation requires isolation. That in order to grow, you often have to step away from the noise, from the crowd, from the habits and people that kept you stuck. And when you do that quietly, without trying to make a scene, you discover how strong you really are. You find clarity in solitude. You hear your own voice again. You stop living for the likes and start living for the legacy. That's when things shift. That's when you know you're no longer the same. There's nothing wrong with being low-key about your progress. There's strength in moving in silence. Because when you grow without noise, the results speak for themselves. The people around you start to notice, not because you told them, but because your energy changed. Your boundaries are clearer. Your standards are higher. Your presence is more grounded. You're no longer triggered by what used to shake you. You're no longer moved by things that once controlled you. That's real growth. Sometimes you'll outgrow environments where you once felt comfortable. You'll outgrow conversations, relationships, jobs, and even parts of your old self. And because you've been growing in silence, you don't always feel the need to explain it. You stop justifying why you've changed. You stop apologizing for the shift. You simply evolve and let your life reflect that evolution. And while that can confuse some people or even offend them, you learn not to shrink back just to make others comfortable with your growth. Not everyone will understand your silence. Some will mistake it for weakness. Others will misread it as distance or arrogance. But you know better. You know that silence isn't emptiness. It's focus, it's preparation, it's healing, it's alignment. And once you've tasted the freedom that comes with growing privately, you won't trade it for superficial attention. You'll value your peace more than popularity. You'll value your character more than clout. Because you've been building something sacred, something sustainable, something that doesn't need to be shouted from the rooftops to be real. Growth is not always glamorous. Sometimes it looks like sleepless nights, uncomfortable conversations, hard decisions, and quiet tears. It's not always pretty cares. It's not always pretty. It's not always post-worthy, but it's always worth it. Because every time you choose to heal instead of hurt, to grow instead of stay stuck, to rise instead of retreat. You're becoming more of who you're meant to be. And that process doesn't have to be broadcast. It just has to be real. The world will often pressure you to show your receipts, to prove your progress, to constantly update others on where you are and what you're doing. But when you're truly committed to growth, that noise fades. You stop moving for validation. You start moving with intention. You stop performing. Just start transforming. And that shift, that internal change, is what brings lasting transformation. It doesn't need an audience. It needs your commitment. There's something deeply powerful about a person who knows they're growing, but doesn't say a word. A person who walks into a room and lets their energy speak for them. A person who doesn't need to explain their glow, their peace, or their confidence because it radiates. It's not arrogance. It's alignment. It's a quiet kind of strength that doesn't have to scream to be heard. It just is. And when others finally see it, when they realize you're not the same, when they feel the shift but don't know when it happened, that's when you know your growth has rooted itself. That's when you know it's not temporary. That's when you know you didn't just change your behavior. You changed your mindset, your perspective, your identity. That kind of transformation doesn't need a microphone. It needs silence, consistency, and faith in the process. Not everything deserves your reaction. That realization can save your peace, your time, and your energy. In a world that constantly tries to provoke you, challenge you, test you, and get a rise out of you, learning when to stay still, when to walk away, when to let things pass without a word. That is wisdom. It's not silence from weakness. It's silence from strength. It's understanding that some things are beneath your spirit, your purpose, your calling. The moment you understand that your reaction is a form of currency, you start spending it more wisely. Every time you react to something that doesn't align with who you are or where you're going, you give it power. You invest in it. You give it time it doesn't deserve, attention it hasn't earned, an emotion it didn't warrant. Not every comment requires a comeback. Not every slight deserves your spotlight. Not every insult needs your investment. The more you grow, the more you begin to recognize that reactions are expensive and not everything is worth the cost. Sometimes your silence says everything that needs to be said and your lack of response echoes louder than any words ever could. There is a difference between reacting and responding. Reacting is emotional, it's immediate. It comes from the gut, from the womb, from the ego. Responding, on the other hand, comes from reflection, from wisdom, from purpose. When you react to everything, you allow external forces to control your internal state. You hand over your peace to the chaos around you. But when you choose not to react, when you take a breath, when you assess what truly matters, you take back control. You become the author of your mood, the manager of your emotions, the protector of your energy. People will try to bait you. They'll poke at your insecurity. They'll say things just to see if they can knock you off balance. And if you respond every time, you become predictable. You become easy to manipulate. But when you choose not to react, when you decide, this isn't worth my energy, you become powerful in your restraint. You send a message without saying a word. You make it clear that your peace is not up for grabs, your attention is not easily purchased, and your character is not subject to public opinion. Sometimes the best clapback is no clapback. Sometimes the greatest strength is in the pause. Because what people want is your reaction. They want the drama, they want the argument, they want the spectacle. And when you don't give it to them, when you keep your focus, when you stay grounded, it frustrates them, it confuses them. But more importantly, it frees you. It allows you to move through life with grace, with intention, with clarity. You stop letting people pull you into their storm, and instead, you invite them into your peace if they can handle it. You begin to realize that not everything that disrespects you deserves to be dignified with a response. Some things are better left unacknowledged. Some people are better left unengaged. Just because someone is loud doesn't mean they're right. Just because they throw a jab doesn't mean you have to throw one back. Not more reactions, but more decisions made in wisdom, restraint, and quiet strength. So let them talk, let them assume, let them throw whatever shade they need to feel seen. Because you're not here for that. You're not here to prove your worth in arguments or validate your power in petty battles. You're here to grow, to rise, to protect your peace like it's sacred, because it is. And when you finally master the art of not reacting, when you learn to let silence do your talking, that's when you've truly stepped into your power. Let them wonder. Let your peace be the loudest thing in the room.